The historic nerfs are live, and we are going to be looking at our first metagame breakdown for the best decks in historic best of 3 after the nerfs to some of the Boros Energy cards. Boros Energy was like 50+% of the meta, it was by and far the best deck in the format. So there is 3 nerfs that happened to Osculus Pride, Guide of Souls, and Galvanic Discharge, all making them a little bit weaker, but as we'll see today, still playable, which is, I think, the ideal mix of what you want to look at in terms of nerfing, not just flat out bowmastering it where the card's useless now. Normally, we look at win rates of the day, or like popularity of the day, before we jump into the win rates from the data that we get from Untapped GG, which is like a companion tool that aggregates user win rates. Link for Untapped if you want to use the tools below, if you want to track your own win rates and look at stats. But I'll paste all these deck lists. There's not much here today. It's just Boros Energy. So the set's kind of resetting with the nerf in. There's not a huge amount of data, but I wanted to get some deck lists out for folks interested in the historic best of 3 format. So we are looking August 6th through the 16th, so 10 days, and 8,100 games played platinum to mythic. So not a huge amount. One thing I'll say, like the populations are fairly small. It's not unusual that's like 1 or 2 people have crazy win rates with a particular deck, but it's more just kind of seeing what is viable post this nerf in terms of the decks themselves. So we'll jump into it. We have first up Golgari Yawgmoth. So we had Abzan Yawg. This is a Golgari version, 91%, 22 games. Yawgmoth basically is a sack engine. You use it with young wolves that give you the ability to kind of loop, where you target each other to undo the undying triggers. You pair that with something that drains life, like a marionette apprentice, and you could drain your opponent out of the game. With Innkeeper, you can gain infinite life. So there's that avenue there. This version here, you got Haywire Mites, Artifact Enchantment Hate, a Boreal Grazer for ramp, Delighted Halfling for ramp. This one's got a Grist that could flip with young wolves coming back, stuff like that. This gives you some more tokens, destroy artifact enchantment, or the ultimate lets you create copies of cards in your graveyard. Birthing Ritual is kind of the engine of this version of the deck, so kind of like a birthing pod. At the beginning of your end step, you sack the creature, or you look at the top 6 cards, or 7, sorry, and then you could sack a creature. If you do, put card with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield, so this helps you kind of dig. Where in the past we had like Quarter Calling, this version's leveraging the birthing pod as its engine. Accursed Marauder as a way to deal with like Sacrifice, Chthonian Nightmare as a way to reanimate stuff. This version's still on 3 chords as well, so pairing up both of those. The Marionette Apprentice, like we mentioned, Hapatra is a really cool way with the Yawg. Every time you put a -1 counter, this makes a snake, so you can basically just keep making creatures to sack, which is cool. You see Springheart and Tuco. Whenever a land comes to play, you create a 1/1 insect. You can bestow it and you get a copy of that creature instead for 2 mana. Most of the time it's just going to be more like fodder to sack. Bogart Trawler is a land that can also Bazooka Bog your opponent. Honest Rutstein is a way to get stuff back from your graveyard and reduce creature cost. Then we have an alchemy card here, Kami of Mourning, 3 mana, 3/2. Enters the battlefield, target creature you control or in your graveyard gains when this creature you control. When a creature you control with greater mana value than this card dies, return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it's another way to kind of get stuff back. So it's just kind of sack value engine like that. Haywire Might, Artifact Enchantment Hate, more removal, pick your poison, flexible removal, Thoughtseize for hand hate, the Meat Hook as a sweeper, Corrupt Decay's flexible removal, Dampening Sphere for the Devotion decks or the Storm decks, Provoker for activated abilities. That basically it's Pithing Needle that you can tutor with Quarter Calling or Birthing Ritual. Lyconia for graveyard hate, Eldrazi for card advantage, Rexage is artifact enchantment hate, Shieldred for like heavy draw style decks. Then go to Mardu Sacrifice. 90% over 31 games. So this is basically red-black sack with Ajani. So Ajani is stupidly busted card. Pairs with Bombardment really well. This version of the deck, we have things like the Forsaken Miner that could come back. If you have Bombardment, every black mana source can just keep getting Miner back each turn cycle. And then it gives you another way to just keep pinging your opponent over and over. Trap Finder helps you find your creatures and just gives you more sack fodder. Shambling Gas can be removal or ramp. Unlucky Witness is card advantage. Amped Raptor can cascade into anything in the deck. Marionette Apprentice is another way to drain. Cthulhian Nightmare as a way to get stuff back. And then you have Deadly Dispute, Corrupted Conviction as card advantage engines. Claims for like the small creature mirrors to steal stuff, and the Festivities for go wide decks that with 1 toughness. Pithing Needle for activated abilities, Soul Guide and Surgical for graveyard hate, Juggernaut Peddler as hand hate, and Sun Cleanser for the energy mirrors. Then have Selesnya Devotion, basically mono green devotion with Elish Norn in the main, 88% or 89% win rate. Okay, I think this is such awful art. Like, it's the art itself, like the style's fine. I just think it looks really stupid as a planeswalker. Karn just being a tree. Everybody else got animals. Karn became a tree. I don't know. That's my perspective. Art's subjective, so like it's well executed from an art perspective, but I don't think I like the Karn tree art. This deck here, adding in Birds of Paradise, helps you cast with the white mana. New card from the latest set. This is craft only, by the way, so you can only get Birds of Paradise by crafting these commander-specific cards. Fanatic Abronis is a way to kind of ramp ahead. Trailblazer, Kiora both provide you a lot of card advantage in the deck by playing 4 toughness creature. Another new card we have is Scrap Shooter, 3 mana, 4/4 reach. When it enters the battlefield, you can gift. So you can give your opponent a card. If you do, destroy target artifact or enchantment. So flexible artifact enchantment hate in the main. Elish Norn doubles up all these ETB triggers, Storm. Basically, it's a Nykthos deck that tries to generate stupid amounts of mana. Notably, no Lair of the Hydra in this mana base. That's probably something you want one of at least. It's another good mana sink. This is a Karn deck, so there's just a lot of Karn targets. Very easy deck to sideboard. You click submit most of the time. Graveyard hate, artifact enchantment hate, activated ability hate, Yawgmoth Sacrifice, or like the Rakdos Sacrifice hate, and then graveyard hate, activated ability hate. You can blow up lands, Stonebrain for combo, Pestilence Cauldron. You generate enough mana with Kiora and Karn in the graveyard and Kiora and Karn in the field. You can basically loop them infinitely, gain infinite life. The One Ring in here, Phyrexian Metamorph as a copy, Sky Sovereign as removal, Contagion Engine, very good against the go wide decks, energy, stuff like that. God Pharaoh for tax, Chromos Memorial can give all your team haste, turn you go off. Cityscape Leveler is general removal. Portal Phyrexia, it's a big over-the-top win condition. Then go to Jeskai Control. This is really like Jeskai. Ain't no triggers happening on my watch, 87%. So we got all the bangers. We got Doorkeeper Thrall, artifacts and enchantments. Artifacts and creatures entering the battlefield don't trigger. We got Harbinger. Creatures entering the battlefield or dying don't trigger. Notably, the dying as well is really good against the sacrifice effects. So if a Johnny were to flip, that's a death trigger on one of the cats. If any of that, like those triggers don't happen, Torpor or creatures entering the battlefield don't trigger. So turning off all that, that means your Flage just comes into play basically for free. You don't have to sacrifice it. It means Null Drifter doesn't get sacrificed, so you just draw cards. A couple Tajik in here, so it's more of like a mid-rangey kind of shell. Galvanic Discharge, Fragment Reality, Tune the Narrative, Wrath the Skies, all the sweepers, Expressive as card advantage mix. This version here it's kind of like the Lotus combo without having to play Lotus Field, which is kind of awkward at times. Activated abilities, Graveyard Combo Hate, Divine Purge as a sweeper for aggressive decks, Kalim for the heavy counterspell, or just like singular target, just grind your matchups. It's just consistent value, and then heavy counterspell decks, you have Chandra mixed in. Then go to the 5-color Woodlands deck, 85%. So this is a deck that qualified for the Arena Championship, kind of bet up on the unsuspecting energy decks. So it's a combo deck a couple different ways. So what you're trying to do is basically self-mill. So you have things like Faithless Looting, you have Satyr Wayfinder, Malavit Rumble, Cathartic Pyre can set you up. What you want to try to do is ideally put Omniscience into your graveyard or God Pharaoh's Gift. And then you basically copy it with Shifting Woodlands. With the Shifting Woodlands, it becomes a copy of God Pharaoh's Gift, for example. If you have Ulamog the Defiler in your graveyard, you exile a copy of Ulamog. Ulamog sees the exiled copy, so it's a 4/4 plus 10 counters. It gets haste, so you can annihilate or 10 your opponent right away. You could just hardcast all these Eldrazi with Omniscience. You have Atraxa mixed in there, so it's like a cheat into play type thing. You also have Smuggler's Surprise as another way to kind of put into play big creatures. Graveyard, Artifact, Enchantment Hate, more Smuggler's Surprise. So if they're attacking your graveyard as well a lot, you can kind of just go to mid-range plan, bring in Fables. You have a bunch of different sweepers in here for the aggressive decks. So you can kind of change up your plan in terms of how you want to approach it. Then go to our first iteration of Boros Energy. So this is the Giganta version. I'll indicate it by having a little J by the name in the video description. Not too much has changed here. We see Ocelote's Pride just being disgusting as a 2-mana card. The Flage version, still a couple copies of Sun Cleanser Main. So I don't know if necessarily still if Sun Cleanser Main is necessary, but for the most part, we have the deck in its pretty much the state it was before the ban or the nerfs. So it seems like it's still fairly reasonable. People are still winning with the deck. Just the power of like Flage, Fables, stuff like that. Sideboard pretty stock. Fragment Reality, Graveyard Hate, and Surgicals, Destroy Evil Artifact. Sorry, Enchantment Hate, Big Thing Hate. Invasion is like a Thoughtseize style effect. And then Sun Cleansers for the more energy mirrors. Then go to, it's not Rakdos Vampires, it's Rakdos Anvil. So this is an Anvil Viper deck. So this one here is 80% win rate. And it is using Anvil. You have Marionette Apprentice, which makes artifacts and also triggers off artifacts going. You have the Kuldotha and Gleeful Demolition package with Voltaren Epicure, Chromatic Stars. So just a bunch of things to make tokens that you can then sack the Viper and then get Anvil going. Kind of sweet. Pithing Needle, activated ability, Soul Guide, Graveyard Hate, Graveyard and kind of combo hate, hand hate, and then enchantment or creature hate. We have Boros Energy number 2. So this is the Lurrus version, 77%. Another deck largely unchanged. We see the Felia in the main, Lightning Helix, the Esper Sentinel. So another deck that's pretty stock in terms of just playing from what it was. Still reasonable win rate, but not like oppressive in terms of play rates. Again, just Fragment, Rending Volleys probably aren't as necessary. There's less of the white decks going around. Like Rending Volley was reasonable in the mirrors. A lot of the similar cards that we saw from past. Like this deck hasn't really changed that much, so I'm not going to go too detail. I want to focus on some of the newer iterations. We have Izzet Wizards, 75%. So this deck is got a couple of new upgrades. We have Stormcatch Mentor. 2 mana, 1/1 haste prowess. Instant sorcery spells cost 1 less. There's not a huge amount of instant sorceries that are like very expensive in this deck, but even just getting Mentor's Guidance for 1 mana to potentially draw 2 cards is very strong. No Dreadhorde Arcanist, just going more hasty, aggressive threats, Slickshot, Balmor. We also have Mockingbird, which could copy any of your creatures, Symmetry Sage. 2 Play with Fires, 2 Shove Asides moving off the energy package. Since Galvanic, we need to have a way to deal 3 damage a lot of times, which Shove Aside provides. Some Considers in there, Wizard's Lightning, and Flame of Anor still all stars in this list. Activated abilities, Shove Aside is more removal, Spell Pierce is cheap disruption, Surgicals for Graveyard Hate, and then you have for the grindier matchups, even against like Boros, Camio's very strong. If it could flip, just providing you with a way to kind of fog their whole team. Aether Gust versus Red and Green decks. Then we go to Azorius Artifacts, so a deck that's kind of reclaimed the spot in the meta that was pushed out by the energy decks. So this is a artifact aggro deck. You have Imperium Thopterus, very strong card, gives you an Ornithopter every turn. It is what we've seen in the past with the Retrofitter Foundry packages, just turning your Thopters into 4/4s, just a lot of artifacts. Ingenious Smith gets value when you play more artifacts, helps you dig for stuff like that. You have tax effects with Sentinel, cheap disruption, kind of mixed in. These decks are have always been very fun in terms of being aggressive, having some card advantage, but not being too oppressive. Like deck still gets hit pretty hard by like Divine Purge or Brotherhood's End, for example. Authority for the aggressive decks, the haste decks, anything going wide, you can kind of brace them that way. Fragment removal, Pithing Needle activated abilities. We've gone through a lot of these cards. Rest in Peace, Reprieve for like the sweeper style decks or the big mana decks. And then lastly, we have Mono Blue Eldrazi. Just the threshold. We usually look at 55% or more in terms of win rate. So, but if you like the Eldrazi, we got a deck here for you. So 55%. This one here is leveraging things like Collector's Vault as a discard outlet to cheat out Emrakul and as well as to help you ramp. You have access to Ugin's Labyrinth here, which helps you potentially ramp up earlier. You have Three Tree City being tried out, just needing Eldrazi, because you have all the Eldrazi Scions that are produced by like Kozilek's Command or Glaring Flesh Raker as ways kind of into there. Cephalids can also produce. Cephalit's interesting. I don't know why. Oh, I guess it's a discard outlet as well. Why you'd play that? Same with like the Epinette, just a colorless line that produces blue if needed. In this version here, you have it that the Herald's ends as a cost reducer for your big stuff. Flesh Raker in like Legacy. My buddy plays Legacy Eldrazi aggro. We don't have the lines to support it here, but the deck with this card is just like insane. You just keep casting Eldrazi and pinging your opponent. Kozilek's Unsealing as a card advantage engine. You have Sink to Stupor as a land or kind of tempo spell. Ugin's Binding can reset your entire opponent's board. Devour Destiny sets up your early draws. Null Drifter gets you some card advantage. Ugin, and then this one's playing really around Emrakul. Chalice to kind of lock out your opponent, playing like low cost stuff. Graveyard Hate, Multicolor Hate, activated abilities between the two. Filigree Salix as a sweeper. Licensors for Graveyard Hate, Weather Runestone for kind of Collected Company style hates, things coming back from the Graveyard Hate, and then the One Ring as well. Stone of Erich is a card you probably want to play in here, just as another way to attack your opponent's library. You may want something like Mystical Dispute as well for the control matchups, things that you might want to consider in the sideboard. That's it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing, if you've been enjoying the new historic format with the nerfs, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.